Cartoons have changed drastically over the years, and hopping on to watch a present-day cartoon has nowhere near the same effect as the ones that I watched when I was younger. I'm not really into modern cartoons except some of the ones geared towards older audiences like South Park and Rick and Morty, but looking at some of the currently running ones geared towards kids, they just seem a lot different.
Apple's shoe, it's not in the sofa, it's not in the freezer, it's not in jail, or with this funny geezer.
They don't seem to have the same charm and touch that the ones in the late 90s and early 2000s had for me. One of these cartoons that seemed to have this charm in every single episode, at least for me personally, was a show that aired on Cartoon Network known as Codename Kids Next Door. Everything about this show just stuck out to me as a kid, and I would love hearing the intro song every single time it came on. It was always unique and exciting, and the writing was perfect for the audience that it was appealing to: kids. But kids today will never really get to experience the show in the way that I did, and with social media and technology, many kids probably won't even experience good cartoons at all. So today, we're going to take a look back at Codename Kids Next Door and see what exactly it was that I experienced as a kid, and why this show was as popular and iconic as it is. Codename Kids Next Door, or KND as it's abbreviated, was a show that sparked from the idea of another show. The original show that inspired KND was an introduction episode of a planned series known as Kenny and the Chimp. Kenny and the Chimp was a cartoon created by Thomas Warburton, and that's the Mr. Warburton name that you see in the introduction of KND. This series was about a boy named Kenny and his pet chimp and their adventures in life. Kenny would always get in trouble because of the chimp, and there was a group of kids that would create even more trouble for Kenny, and this group was known as the Kids Next Door. The show got rejected by Cartoon Network, and only one episode ever aired. But the interest wasn't in Kenny and the Chimp. It was actually in the Kids Next Door group that appeared in the show. This concept was tweaked quite a bit, and Codename Kids Next Door was born and introduced onto Cartoon Network. With KND, there are 5 main characters, all of which are kids. There is number 1, also known as Nigel Uno, who is the uptight leader of the group and always takes things a bit too seriously. There's number 2, who is a pilot and inventor who tends to be obsessed with food and likes to eat a lot. Number 3 was the next character, and she was the dorky and constantly happy one who created trouble without realizing it, because of her lack of intelligence, if you want to put it that way. She was also the team doctor and was probably my least favorite character just because of her voice and the way she carried herself just kind of irritated me. After number 3 is number 4, which is a character who isn't very book smart but has the street knowledge to be the grunt in the group. This character was my favorite character when I used to watch the show, and he was the one who was involved in combat and basically just used brute force to do everything. Finally, there's number 5, who's the chill girl in the group, and she always has the most sane ideas and holds the team together. These characters were members of Kids Next Door Sector 5, which were a group of kids who fought grown-ups and their terrible schemes and crimes against kids. Kids Next Door was a worldwide group, and the ones in the show were just one of the smaller sectors of the entire group. They would deal with problems caused by things like grown-ups not allowing kids in the pool and limiting the amount of sweets they could eat, and they would find unique ways to deal with the villains that were causing these problems. The villains would change constantly depending on what it was the group was up against, but there was a group of enemies known as the Delightful Children from Down the Lane, and they did return quite a bit in the series. I personally never really understood why these children hated the Kids Next Door so much, but they really seemed to have some serious beef with them. Plus, the father of this villainous group, known as Father, was one of the biggest villains in the entire show, and he also quite often appeared on it. This group, combined with Father, was the main cause of many of the problems that happened to the KND group, and they really helped to further the plot. The main characters were all unique, and they actually contributed to the plot of the show. I remember watching as a kid and thinking that number 1 was the coolest dude of all time, and I wanted to be like this imaginary person and fight grown-ups for making me follow rules. But the characters each have their own unique personality traits that they bring to every fight, and this variation is what keeps things from getting repetitive. Even though in almost every episode they're doing the same concept, fighting adults that are trying to ruin the fun, it doesn't actually get repetitive. The storyline has changed throughout the various seasons of the show, and quite drastically. In the beginning seasons, the episodes were pretty much always separate and unrelated. There were 2 15-minute episodes per 30-minute time slot, similar to how SpongeBob and many other cartoons were structured. and each of these episodes were different events and issues that the team had to fix. But as time progressed and more seasons came out, the show began to develop a bit of a storyline. Episodes would relate to each other, and one event in a previous episode would cause others to happen later on. I would have to say that the most notable season that this happened in was the last aired season of the show, Season 6. And it all led up to a crazy show finale that was by far one of the most memorable of all cartoon endings. But we'll get back to that later. Looking back, K&D has held up extremely well over the last 16 years, and it doesn't seem like it would really be that old. The bright colors and over-exaggerated circular features of the characters really help to add to the innocent and childish vibe that this show gives off. If you take a look at the types of shapes making up the art in cartoons, you can really tell the difference with how the characters are designed and who the show is marketed towards. For example, if you look at a show like Rugrats or Hey Arnold, you'll see a lot of circular shaped characters, and these shows were geared towards younger audiences. But looking at something geared towards older audiences like Total Drama Island, you'll see harsh triangles and less soft colors and shapes. So it is a lot easier to tell that a show is made for younger kids just by looking at it. But to be honest, rewatching the show as I'm older now, I somehow still found it pretty entertaining. It's rare to find a show that could possibly appeal to both children and people who are a bit older. But honestly, this is a thing that Cartoon Network has always done a good job with, and looking at almost all of their shows, they all hold up extremely well. I remember back when I used to watch this show, I really got into it, that is, when it was on. This wasn't a show that I would go out of my way to seek and watch, but I guarantee you that every time it was on, I was watching it. The only season that I would really say that I went out of my way to watch every single episode in was the final season of the show, Season 6. This season was amazing, and I would have to say that it was what really made me fall in love with the show genuinely, because after I finished it, I actually did go back and watch the entire show start to finish. And this leads me to something that sits super personal with me in this show, the ending. The last official episode of this show aired on January 21st, 2008. This episode was known as Operation Interviews, which was abbreviated as It's Now the Extra Really Very Interesting End Wrap-Up Story, and it was a perfect ending to this show. A lot of shows just leave off on some super thrown together ending or cheesy cliffhanger, and writers don't spend enough time thinking out their ending, but in this show that was not the case. Now obviously there's about to be some serious spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to see them, skip ahead to this part. This episode was a true masterpiece, and like I said earlier, it was one of the best cartoon endings of all time in my opinion. It was an episode that made me really upset as a kid, and even watching it back as an adult makes me a bit sad. The writers truly cared about what they created, and they didn't want to end it without making this known, and I love the thought behind it. I'm not about to get into detail about the entire plot of this episode, but it is told from the perspectives of live-action recreations of adult versions of the K&D group. These people are being interviewed by an unseen person, and this person is asking them to talk about what happened in their last mission before Number 1 got decommissioned. They go through telling the story of what happened, and the episode cuts between these real-life clips and showing what happened in the cartoon itself. We find out that Number 2 and 5 get married as adults, and so did Numbers 3 and 4. Now this was super interesting to me personally, and it was something that I really wasn't expecting coming into this episode. A lot of stuff happened in this episode, and it all led down to Number 1, the main and most important character of the show, being recruited by the Galactic Kids Next Door. He's forced to leave all of his friends and family behind, and a super dramatic scene was shown with him saying goodbye to his friends. To be honest, this scene was actually kind of emotional, and for the first time in the show's history, we see Number 3 crying and not being happy. Remember, this is the character that has really only ever been happy for the entire show, and to see this innocent happy girl crying really was touching. Everyone was super upset that he was leaving, and we even find out that Number 1's dad used to be a member of the Kids Next Door himself. But all of this happens, and then boom, the show is officially over.
Alright guys, listen up. Even if we never see each other again, just promise me one thing, that you'll never grow up. Even if you're 100 years old and don't remember a thing about our times together, you'll still be a kid at heart, okay? So who's with me? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! Kids Next Door! Goodbye.
but we do get a cool little sneak peek back into the live action part of this episode towards the end. We see grown-up version of number 5 leaving the interview, and we learn that the person that was asking the questions was actually Father, which again was one of the major villains of the entire series. Now I don't know about you guys, but whenever Father came out in real life towards the end of the episode, that actually terrified me as a kid. Like, I swear I would have nightmares about this. It just terrified me the way he popped out and was like scary. I mean, looking back, it's like not even real, but you know what I mean. Probably the second scariest thing I ever saw as a kid besides Wallace and Gromit and the Were-Rabbit. That crap terrified me. But anyways, as she was leaving, number 5 picked up her super modern phone and told the person on the other end of the line that she said everything that Father wanted to hear, and told the person on the phone, number 1, that she will see him soon. And just like that, a show that was a true Cartoon Network classic was officially over. But every second of the series was worth the time that I spent watching it. And from this point on, no more episodes of the main series of the show have been released. There was a crossover event between the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and K&D, and it was a pretty cool episode. But other than that, nothing else has been done with the actual series. Warburton, the person in charge of the series, has hinted at a potential spin-off. In late 2008, he was asked if Operation Interviews was in fact the final episode of the show, and he stated that it may possibly not be, because a revival may happen in the future. He pitched the idea to Cartoon Network for something known as Galactic Kids Next Door, but unfortunately, the idea was turned down. A petition was actually posted on change.org to try to get the show greenlit into production, and even though it got nearly 100,000 signatures, nothing has happened since. Thus, the series that defined my childhood more than any other has been decommissioned ever since the finale, and making this video has brought back a ton of memories for me. So much thought was put into the show, and you could really feel the passion that was involved in creating it. It was a show that never lost its charm, and one that I still feel is one of my personal favorite cartoons of all time. Anyways guys, that is going to be it for today's video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Now I know this is way different from the gaming content that I usually make, but this is just something that's been super interesting to me, and something that I've wanted to do for quite a while. But don't worry, there will still be tons of gaming content, maybe like one cartoon video for every 5 gaming videos. This is just going to be something that I do like every so often. But like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time, and peace.